It just seems a special challenge these days with the with cost of food skyrocketing and fuel costs just expanding on a daily basis, and yet we still have so many hungry people.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's one of the big ironies of the United States is that we consider ourselves feeding the world with our commodities, but we're a net importer of food. And we have 10% of our families are food insecure, which means that at some point during the year they're not sure where their meal will come from. We have about 20% of our population that at some point during the year might be in danger of knowing that they can have good food. And it's a sign of how distant we've become from our own lives, that we have people who want to produce food who can't. We have people who want to eat food who can't. We have billions of dollars of food and commodities being traded, but some big disconnects in that system that we have to work very hard to try to repair.
So what do you see in the future, Ken? What can people do to support a more sustainable, a more local, a more secure food supply?
Well, I think, again, people are doing this all over the country. I would say the first step is really to start thinking carefully about what you eat and what you feel is right to eat and what really makes your body as healthy as possible. A lot of us are eating, and I do this myself, we eat foods that aren't really as healthy as they could be because it's advertised and we sort of feel good about the feeling of having that food, or we're in a social setting and everybody else is eating that and we join in. But a lot of people, I think, who start this, either they start by getting cancer or they start by just saying, I'm going to have really high quality food in my life because that's one of the ways I'm going to draw a line and take a stand. That's the first step most of us need to take as consumers. And then having taken that step, I think we all have to start thinking about, well, if I'm going to do that, where will I get the food? And to start meeting growers who might grow that food, or going to a food cooperative to find out what they have to offer that will be the healthy product you want, or to go to a retail store and really see what their offerings are. And I find myself shopping a lot and saying I'd rather have some product from my home state than from far away. And if I start spending my consumer dollars that way, it sends signals to grocers that they should really source more food locally. I started talking about local foods in 1974, and I interviewed some grocers in 1981 who said, we couldn't possibly source local foods because we have contracts from growers in California. Those same stores are now among the leaders of trading local foods because their customers came to them and said, how come you can't sell me corn from Minnesota? How come you can't give me fresh tomatoes from a neighboring farmer? We have community-supported agriculture farms, CSA farms, that are literally, as soon as they announce they have memberships available, they get oversold because so many people want to buy that food directly from a farmer, where you basically invest in the farm in the start of the year and get a share of food during the growing season. Then, having made relationship with farmers and knowing what they do and learning about the risks they take as farmers and what they have to do to distribute that food to you, then you start thinking about, how can I help the system be stronger? How do I help invest in that system? How do I help volunteer in a way to give people an easier time of raising and getting that food to my table? How do I get active in, say, a food policy council or a community of practice, and where people really develop a very strong notion of working together to build a lot of understanding together, to build a lot of trust, and to really share the resources that we need to make this kind of transition happen.
I do get this sense of hope from you, though, Ken.
Well, I do have that. I think one of the reasons is that I was suggesting local foods a long, long time ago, and people just turned away. And to move from that to being able to get paid to really raise some issues with a lot of force, and to have the experience of being able to speak around the country. I'm averaging about one speech a week around the United States for the last 2 years in a row. And what I see happening is, when I'm able to talk about what I know, when I'm able to bring some data to a local group that's really ready to move, I see things move. And I see people coming up to me and saying, I liked what you were saying, I like what we're doing, can you come back and help us again? Or can you come to a new region and help us seed some new activity? And it's so exciting to be part of that process. It's not because of me, it's not because of my numbers, it's because people are ready to hear those numbers that have been there all along. And people are really standing up in a remarkably fluid and interesting way to insist that things get better. It's always very gratifying and energizing to be part of that, even though the obstacles can be quite large.